How's it going, everyone? Doom Bandit here, bringing you part 2 of our review for One Night in Karazhan. They released a couple more cards, so I wanted to go through them a little bit. So the first one we got was a Warlock card, Malkazar's Imp, which is a 1-mana 1/3, where whenever you discard a card, draw a card. Now, this card is awesome. I think that this is the type of card that will definitely help push some of the cards that have the discard effects, like Darkshire Librarian, or even possibly Succubus, into seeing constructed play. The reason I think that is because you could theoretically get essentially two card draws out of Darkshire Librarian by having Malkazar's Imp. Along with that, 1/3 fits right into the zoo. 1/3 for 1, very good stat line. Right in there with Voidwalker, except you have this effect instead of Taunt. And it has the demon text, so it's also keeping in check cards like, Bane of Doom. It also helps you with Doomguard, so you can have kind of a no drawbacks Doomguard while you're playing Zoo. While I think that Zoo didn't need the tools for this, maybe we'll see the archetype at least switch up a little bit. So expect in the upcoming meta to probably see a good amount of Zoo. And definitely see Malkazar's Imp being toyed around with. Now, the next card that I want to talk about is Pompous Thespian. Now, Pompous Thespian is a very generic card. It's going to be a common card, and it's going to be 2-mana 3/2 with Taunt. I think this is kind of showing that Blizzard has overestimated the ability of Taunt. Because before this, a lot of the taunts were low attack and slightly buffed health, but that didn't really matter. This is like a strictly better Frostwolf Grunt. I think they're realizing that they didn't really need to give up the stats for, especially attack, for the taunt ability. So this makes me excited because this makes me excited also for other cards in the set or in future sets that will have taunt. So I think that this is going to be a good tool against, not maybe against aggro decks, but it'll be a good tool for an arena to kind of put off some of the more aggressive tempo decks, force people to trade, that sort of thing. So I think this card was definitely needed, and I'm very glad that Blizzard is introducing these kind of taunt minions that don't really have that much of a drawback as far as the mana cost is concerned. So that one out of the way, which I'm very excited about. Let's move on to Moros, which is a 3-mana 1/1 with Stealth. At the end of your turn, summon a 1/1 Steward. Now, I'm just kind of confused on why this card is being made. At this point, we already have a Master for 3 mana, which is a 1/5 that gives you a 1/1, which is theoretically better. Obviously, the Stealth helps to give Moros more longevity and is harder to kill in some ways. But at the same time, with Warrior having so many whirlwind effects, and just a lot of random deal 1 damage, I don't know how impactful that Stealth is going to be. Then again, it could be in another. You could be seen in another class. My mind kind of went to Warlock, but you could see it maybe in Paladin, where you're able to use the Keeper of Uldaman to buff it up afterwards, so that might be cool. But overall, this card is very interesting, and unless they have a synergy with the Stewards in particularly, I don't think it's going to see too much constructed play. And it's really not a good enough legendary to be picked in Arena, since generally you want higher value cards in Arena. But it makes me interested in what Blizzard has in mind for generating tokens like this, because they're coming out with a couple other cards that I'll actually get into, where you're generating tokens instead of simply playing a creature and that's it. It's kind of the same thing with Inspire mechanics, but this time they're doing more spells or other minions that summon things passively. So I'm not sure how Moros will combo well in the certain archetypes. Maybe you could see it in the Druid decks with Power of the Wild and whatnot, but at the same time it's kind of, I don't know, it feels like there's no niche for Moros. And I feel like any niche that Moros would have been filled by Imp Master. So I'm interested to see what some people are able to come up with it for Moros. But for now, I'm not sure how much play he will actually see. And speaking of the token generations, the next card I want to go over was Protect the King, which is a warrior card, 3 mana for each enemy minion, summon a 1/1 pawn with Taunt. Now again, I find this very interesting because it's summoning 1/1s, and they have Taunt, and that's great. With Moros, one of the issues I think is that the stewards don't have Taunt, so it's kind of like a scaled down Hogger without Taunt. I think Noxious put it that way, which I am inclined to agree with. With this one, it's kind of like, first of all, you see that cards where you're playing from behind, and then you summon minions. So like, I think one of the best ones, if I have it, Cyclopean Horror. I don't have it, but Cyclopean Horror, the 4 mana 3/3 Taunt with Battle Cry, gain +1 health for each enemy minion, sees no play. Because for this card to be good, you already have to be playing from behind, and then if your opponent has hard removal, you're kind of screwed. And the only one that's been the only card where you spawn stuff as the enemy has more minions that's been played all the time is Unleash the Hounds, and that's because these hounds have charge. I don't think Taunt is going to be like, this is legitimately the same thing, except the hounds have Taunt and are beasts, which is also a big deal, and these are just pawns with Taunt. So I'm assuming that they're going to be like vanilla, where they don't really have a secondary effect other than Taunt. But I think that might just be too passive, honestly. Maybe this could... I think this is them trying to push Bolster. So if this card turns out to be very good in a Zoo-type metagame, then Bolster could become very good, which I also think is kind of cool. And like we've seen, they've been trying to really push us. They put out Sparring Partner, they put out Fierce Monkey, both very solid stat lines, and like for Sparring Partner, a pretty good ability, pretty good combo with Black Knight, all that type of stuff. But we just haven't seen Bolster. Bolster is notoriously one of the worst arena cards also, because like it's most of the time a dead card. And I've even toyed around in some Dragon decks, putting Bolster in there and stuff like that, and the card just hasn't worked. So I think that this is them really trying to push that. Maybe they're thinking, like, going through their thought process, it might be like, well, the reason, like, they might think, oh, the reason Unleash the Hounds works is because Beasts synergy, whereas I personally think it's more because of the charge. And I just think that Taunt is too reactive, whereas Unleash is reactive, something that your opponent has to play around because it's such a proactive card, being able to deal damage to the face. So if you get your opponent low enough, they might not even be able to play that many minions to try to recover and beat you down, because then they'll play into Unleash the Hounds. Whereas with Protect the King, they just have Taunt, and then they're like, okay, well now I just need an AoE of 1 damage. And there are so many classes that have this type of stuff. Like if Protect the King comes really hard into the meta, maybe you'll even see people either playing Arcane Explosion or the Twilight Flamecaller in mage decks. And with the amount of OTK and just various warriors, this deck is just not. I don't think it's going to be one of the top tier warrior decks, unfortunately. But I like the concept. I like that they're really trying to put out a bunch of Taunt mechanics in fairly costed minions and cards. The next card I want to talk about is, which one do I want to go to next? Let's keep going with like the token theme, and I want to talk about the Warlock card, Karazhan. Karazhan is interesting because it's 5 mana, 5 mana card spell for Warlock class that summons a 1/1 Candle, 2/2 Broom, and 3/3 Teapot. Now this could be very interesting in the Zoo decks because you are gaining 3 minions, so it has kind of that Sea Giant synergy where you're getting a bunch of minions, but you're only playing 1 card for it, so similar to how Forbidden Ritual works. However, I think the difference is with Forbidden Ritual is that you can play this card almost whenever, just because of the flexibility of this. This is easily one of the best Forbidden cards. This and Forbidden Healing, I think, are the best. Forbidden Flame was okay, but so I think Karazhan. I think that I'm gonna try and experiment with this card. The way that I see it, it's kind of It's it's interesting because it's trying to put value into a zoo deck, where I don't think you might see this like in Arena Lock because they have so many one-ofs, but at the same time, like, there's not much utility other than trying to get a bunch of minions on the board, which is what Zoo wants to do. So even though these aren't technically sticky minions, having those different stat lines could really help out. And I'm definitely excited to see what this card brings. And I think that this card will be pretty good in Arena as well. And again, it kind of goes back to the whole, it's interesting how they're trying to make tokens kind of more of a thing, since Inspire didn't really seem to do it with stuff like Silverhand Region and other type of Inspire cards that summon minions. You don't see them outside of Arena, really. So I'm curious to see how this all plays out. The next card that I want to talk about is Babbling Book. So, Babbling Book is a 1-mana 1/1 with Battle Cry, add a random mage spell to your deck. So I think that this card will definitely see play in like a Reno type deck. As for the standard and like Casino Mages, so this is more of a fun card, but at the same time you can get value out of it with Grand Bronzebeard, where you're able to generate 2 spells. And mage spells are generally very good. So if I type in spells, oh whoops, just spell, I think. Okay, close enough. But mage spells, a lot of them are either damage dealing or have a very good impact on the board. Like stuff like getting another Frostbolt, even getting a secret can generally be good. And the random effect means that your opponent has to try to play around a lot of other things. So maybe they'll have to play around a mirror entity that you might get from Babbling Book, because they could lose to that if you play this late game and then play a secret. You might be able to get another Polymorph or any form of removal. You could even get another board clear in Flame Strike. So I think that this card has a lot of potential as far as being able to make it into a couple different types of mage decks. Obviously, I don't think that this will make it into like a freeze mage type deck, but you never know if you could see this type of thing in either like a Reno grinder mage or just in general a tempo mage. That it's kind of like a mini spell slinger in a way. So it could be very interesting, and I'm definitely gonna experiment with the card, and so forth. Next card I want to talk about, I'm actually very, very excited, was announced, which is Bookworm, which is a 6-mana 3/6 with Battle Cry. If you're holding a dragon, destroy an enemy minion with 3 or less attack. Now the card that a lot of people are comparing it to is Cabal Shadow Priest, and I think that this card, both of them have similar stat lines where they both work around the general form, like what you pay for 4 mana. So like Water Elemental, a lot of other 4 mana cards have 3/6 stats, because that's a very nice high health stat and a decent enough attack to put off from let's say like a lot of the zoo minions. Like you can trade into them and then you're left with a nice body still. And then Cabal Shadow Priest has the Yeti stat lines with 2 extra mana cost to take control of a 2 or less attack minion. However, I think that Bookworm is going to be in some cases a lot better than Cabal Shadow Priest, because a lot of the time it doesn't matter if you're taking control of the 2 or less attack minion, whereas there are a lot of 3 attack minions in the game right now, especially in like Warrior, where you have Alexstrasza's Champion. You have, let's see, Ravaging Ghoul. If a Frothing Berserker only triggered once, you could just destroy that immediately. Bloodhoof Brave. And then there's just so much, there's so many targets at 3 attack that you don't normally get at the 2 attack mark. You could even get something like a Fandral Staghelm or a Violet Teacher, and really shut down those annoying Yogg Druids, which are the bane of my existence on Ladder. I don't know why, but they're the ones who always seem to beat me. But I'm very excited for this card, because I think that this will really push dragons into the control archetype. This is a card that you can hold on to also to trigger your other effects. So a lot of the dragon cards kind of like Blackwing Tech aren't, and where is the other one? And Blackwing Corruptor aren't dragon cards. So this is one of the ones where you need another dragon other than this one, but at the same time this also acts as a dragon. And this is something that you could easily hold on to because you don't necessarily need to play it as a body, because the body isn't good enough on 6 mana to say, okay, well, I don't need any other value. Like, you'll wait. So this will be another good card in your hand, kind of like Azure Drake, which will normally trigger with Twilight Guardian. Like, you'll be able to play your Twilight Guardian on 4, still have a 6 mana dragon in your hand that you'll get value from later, because you won't be able to play stuff like Ysera and stuff like that, so you'll still have higher end dragons in your deck. But this allows you to have a lower curve dragon that'll trigger the even lower curve cards like Blackwing Tech and Blackwing Corruptor. So I think that this just helps curve everything out very well, because you have Alexstrasza Champion into Blackwing Tech, into Twilight Guardian, into Blackwing Corruptor, into Bookworm. Like, that's a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like, that's insane. This card could curve out extremely well in the deck, and if you're holding something like an Azure Drake or an Alexstrasza or Ysera, like, this card just has so much potential to bring back control dragon decks rather than just the complete tempo-oriented decks. So I'm very excited for this card in particular. And let's move on to the next card, which one haven't I talked about yet? I think there actually might only be one left now. And that last one is... Here he is. Sorry about that. Lost it in my folder. We have the Prince himself, Prince Malkazir. So, this is something I'm going to talk about in a later video. I know I said this in the last one, but Blizzard is really confusing me on if they want this to be a control game or if they don't. Still, just based on the mechanics, I think that they don't, and some of their other statements. But anyway, 5 mana, 5/6. When the game starts, add 5 extra legendary minions to your deck. This card is going to be included in almost every control deck. I think that this is the card that could push control into a metagame where it was otherwise lacking. And that's the first thing. Second of all, this is great for like people who don't go out and buy hundreds of packs like a lot of the professionals do to have every single card. Like, if you don't have Grommash Hellscream, let's say. Where was it? Here it is. If you don't have Grommash, put Prince Malkazir in your deck and you might be able to get him. Don't have Ragnaros, might be able to get one from the Prince. So I think that this card makes a lot of decks more viable for other players, and hell, you could even just run more removal, even if you have those type of cards. Run more removal in your standard deck, and then rely on Malkazar to give you the other cards that you wouldn't normally, that you don't have in the actual deck. So I believe I heard, I gotta confirm this with another source, but I believe I heard that it will only give up to, it says 5 extra legendary minions to your deck. I believe that if you already have, like, let's say a Reno in your deck, it's not going to give you another Reno. I mean, I believe this leak, or maybe it was confirmed by Blizzard, I haven't checked, but I believe that because it fits thematically with the party, like, you only have one guest, like the guest can only come, like, you can't have 2 Renos at the party, sort of thing. So, like, Reno decks are going to be amazing with this. This card could easily help some sort of Reno locks. A lot of control warriors that want to win the fatigue race will simply throw this in, especially if the metagame, which I really hope it doesn't, consists entirely of control warrior. But I think that this is honestly a great card, and it shows that Blizzard is really paying attention to their design space. They really opened it up with standard and getting rid of a lot of overpowered death rattle minions. So they are really starting to work with what they have, and I think that this is great. Whether or not it'll be completely viable is yet to be determined, but I am extremely excited for what this says about the direction of Hearthstone and just for the rest of the expansion. I think that they are showing that they really care about keeping the metagame either interesting, maybe even they like, even though they always say, oh, we care about interactiveness and all that stuff, maybe like if a metagame isn't as interactive as, let's say, it is right now for some reason, uh, where it's a lot of control decks and a lot of removal. Even then, if that's like, if with standard that stuff kind of keeps rotating, so like let's say with this set they introduce a very control heavy metagame, I think that's fine to have for a little bit. Um, I'm just very excited to see the rest of the cards that they throw at us. They've shown that they are ready to start really expanding the design space by adding even more than 30 cards to your deck. They showed us that a little bit with Gang Up, but with Prince Malkazar, every single class has the ability to gain extra cards in their deck. Um, so let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Let me know what do you think of all these cards. I'm sorry, I'm just super excited for all this news, and I have a lot of thoughts in my head that I don't want to say right now. I want to save for another video. But if you have any questions, ask them in the comment section below. Make sure that you are keeping up with all. Make sure that if you haven't, you subscribe, follow on Twitter, all those sorts of things that we can stay updated on when I go on stream and all that type of stuff. So with that, thank you so much all for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.